Our final lesson for this week is to find the decimal equivalents of 1/2, 1/4, and 3/4. We start with this in year 5, you move on to other fractions, which are slightly harder, but these ones fit nicely into a decimal, so using tenths and hundreds. So we're going to look at those and see how that would work. So the first thing we need to do is look at how we might be able to prove what a half would be in terms of decimals. What I want you to do is have a look at the image I've got on screen, pause it in a second, and see whether or not you can prove how you might use 100 square to prove that 1/2 equals 0.5. Come back in a moment and I'll go through. Pause it now. Okay, so hopefully what you all did was you coloured in half of the 100 square. Now this could have been done in multiple ways, but for my case, I'll just colour it in like that. Now we know from previous lessons that we can change 100 square into a fraction, which then links into a decimal. So let's do that and let's see how that can prove that 1/2 equals 0.5. So the first thing that we do is we count how many hundreds we have. So we've got 100 square over here. Each row is 10. So we've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 colored in, which is half of them that are there. So if we were to write that as a fraction, we can say that we have 50 hundredths. Like that. Now, we can link this into our decimal as much as we've done before, and we convert this in the same way. Now, 50 hundredths can both be the top and the bottom divided by 10. So we can actually simplify this fraction. And the simplified fraction is 5/10, like that. Now, this actually makes it much easier for us because when we look at making our decimal, we know we've got our ones and we've got our tenths column. So if we just place our 5/10 in the tenths column, make sure we put our decimal point and our 0 in, the outcome is 0.5. And we proved that our half is the same thing as 0.5. So try the same with 100 square, proving what a quarter might be. Now you can do this in multiple ways, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but think about how you might colour a quarter in and what that might be as 100ths and how you would write that as a decimal. Have a go and come back in a minute. So we're going to colour in a quarter. Now I'm going to do this in a particular way. I'm going to take the example that we had of a half, and I'm just going to colour in half of that half. We know that's a quarter. So it will look something like this. And then we can count how many that we've got coloured in there. So let's do that. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each of my rows is 5, the coloured amounts. So that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So if we were to write that as a fraction, that's 25 over 100. Now, the good thing about this is, and the way that we've done it, is that you can see the link between a half and a quarter, and you can see that 25 is actually a half of 50, and therefore you get that link between what a quarter is and a half is, and it helps out later on. So you can see that you could have done that in different ways. You could have done 2 for lines and 5, that would still be a quarter, just slightly easier this way. Then we're going to take this, and we're going to think about our part whole model, and we're going to split this down into a number of tenths and a number of hundredths, just because this makes it easy for us to make it into our decimal. So the amount of tenths we got is the amount of tens we have here, that's 2, and the amount of hundreds we have is left over is just units. So we've got 2/10 and 5/100. Therefore, if we make our place value grid again, which is there, we can then see that if we place this into that place value grid, we very, very quickly get 2/10, that's that bit there. We get 5/100, that's that bit there. We have no whole numbers, so it's a 0, so it's 0.25, and there it is. We've proved that it's right. Now, the one other one that we had to prove was 3/4. So we can actually use the same diagram to help us out. We know that the number we've got there is 25/100. So what we have left must be 3/4 if this is 1/4. So if we look at this diagram, the blue area now is our 3/4. Now we could go through and count all of them, or we can know that if a fraction was 100 hundredths in total, we've taken away 25 of them, we must have 75 left. So at that point, once again, our fraction would be 75 over 100. And then we can partition that down the same way that we were going to do. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to let you have a guess what you think it might be. Come back and let me know. Pause it now. Okay, so let's go through it exactly the same way as we did the previous one. What we're going to do is we're going to make this into the two parts. One of the parts is going to be our tenths, and the other parts are going to be our hundredths. Now, the reason we do this is just it makes our life much, much simpler for exchanging into decimals. So we look at our number here. The number of tenths we have is how many tens we have here, which is our 7. So we have 7/10, and we have the leftover, which is 5, which is 5/100. So in our place value grid, we have our ones, we have our decimal points, we have our tenths, and we have our hundredths, much like we have had the entire time. And placing it out, we have 7/10, we have 5/100, and we have no whole numbers. So our 3/4 would be 0.75. Now, there's lots of ways you could have got to that answer. The other way you could have known was if 1/4 was 0.25, we could have had 3 of those. So we add 0.25 together 3 times and get 0.75. You could also know that 3/4 is the same as 1/2 plus 1/4. We know that 1/2 is 0.5. We know that 1/4 is 0.25. And you can add them together to get 0.75. Now, all of these proofs are very, very useful for you to know, but also when moving forward, especially going forward into the next couple of years, when you think about percentages, knowing that 1/4 is 0.25 or 3/4 is 0.75 and 1/2 is 0.5 really stands you in good stead for when we start to introduce percentages. So it's one of those facts that if you know, makes your life easier. So my best bet for all of you, we've done the proof. If you remember it, it'll make your life easier. Here we are, our last couple of questions for this week. You'll notice that the first 3 are very similar to what we've already done. It's just I want you to go through and work it through yourself. And the last question here just expands on that and lets you play around with the numbers and work out the similarities between them using the knowledge we've gone through today. I hope this makes sense. Remember, you can post your answers onto Tapestry. And once again, please try and use Times Table Rockstars just to get your knowledge that much quicker, because all of this decimal stuff would be easier if you know and have quick access to your times tables. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next week.